Welcome to our webcast today by the Youth Professionals Network. Hi, I'm Penny Pozornik from Synagogue Services, and I wanted to firstly welcome you all. Thank you for tuning in. We are about to hear from Rabbi Einhorn, which we're very excited about, but I just wanted to let you all know that please feel free to email me throughout the webcast with any questions, and we can send those questions straight on over to Rabbi Einhorn right after his presentation, and he will be able to answer them. In addition, we will be having YouthCon again this year, which is very exciting. So please feel free to check out our website, youthcon.org, and there is an early bird registration fee before April 30th. So we really hope that you'll all be able to join us this year. So I want to call upon Rabbi Einhorn, who is the rabbi at Westside Institutional Synagogue, as well as the founder and director of of the Wings program. And without further ado, Rabbi Einhorn.
Hi there, welcome back. I know it's been a little while since we had a webinar together, and today's topic is how to generate creativity, which is a question we get a lot. Youth groups feeling after a while that things are running stale, they're running in overdrive, and they want to know how they could spark those creative juices, how to get new ideas going. Now, the importance of creativity, you have to be careful not to overstate and understate. Meaning, a lot of times we think it's the great new flashy idea or the new flashy program which brings kids in or keeps kids interested, as opposed to realizing that often it's other things such as involvement and training leadership and connecting with the kids, connecting with their parents. And we've spoken plenty about that, about strengthening the youth groups. There'll be many more videos we'll be putting up online that are not just webinars, short videos and ideas and suggestions of cultivating and growing your youth groups. So on one hand, it's not that the creative idea is the be-all and end-all of a great youth group. You could do with, a lot of times youth groups could thrive even on neutral programming. But let us not understate the impact and the importance of a creative program, of a great creative idea, of a great creative structure, and how to lay out your youth program, because it keeps everything fresh. It keeps giving you buzz. It gets parents excited. It gets your synagogue staff excited, your rabbi, your chazan, everybody involved that should be there supporting you gets excited when you have new and fresh ideas. And then other kids tell other kids, and chaver yisla. Everybody's got a friend, someone else to tell, and before you know it, you're the most happening youth group with that creative idea. So this subject of sparking creativity is the subject of major and significant amounts of literature. It's not a subject that's contained, obviously, to youth groups. It's a subject that spans, every single vocation, every single area. How do we generate creativity? How do we generate those fresh and new ideas? So I'm going to throw at you some suggestions and ideas based on a little bit of research we've done on ways of implementing and generating creativity. I'll share with you as well some of the things I do personally to try to come up with new ideas in my shul, try to come up with new ideas that we try to share here at the OU. And you could take some of these, you could leave some of them behind, you could use a mix of them. These are just ideas on how to help you generate creativity within your youth group. Number one, a very powerful effect as far as creating an impact in terms of generating creativity is to sit down and ask yourself, whether it's you alone or with your staff. If you have a staff of youth leaders, it'd be more helpful to do this. And you try to create the visual picture of $1 million. If we right now were given a grant of $1 million from a major Jewish philanthropist or a major Jewish organization, how would we put that youth event to use? How would we put the money to use with an event? What would we do with it? How would we make it significant? How would we make our event stand out, make people feel the $1 million is being used? Now, it's a lot of money. And if you're given that grant, I bet you'd be thinking a lot differently. So the question is, what would you do with it? Raising that question, you'll notice right away, will generate amazing response. You'll be thinking in a totally different direction with that that sort of that yoke over you, knowing that you have this major grant coming in. Now, I know it's not real, and I know it's not really happening, it's not really coming, but the question is assuming, and if you could vision it, make it vivid, as detailed as possible with your group. Picture the million, what it would look like sitting there with the Jewish organization writing you that big check, and you have to decide how you're going to use it, or it's taken away from you. So that is one great way to generate creativity. You'll be thinking in directions you could never have imagined you would think. Number 2, critical is to be alert to the world around you. Too often a youth group shuts itself off from the world around them and sticks to whatever the weekly parsha is, or some other game, or some other event, when the key really is to think, what is going on in the world right now? What is happening? What of significance is happening in the news? What of significance is happening that's relevant as far as the local Jewish community? What's happening out there? Meaning, if you think broadly, and let's say you're a type of shul that would want to incorporate, at least in the general programming, something for Thanksgiving. If you understand that right now that's what's happening out there, that's what people are talking about, that's what kids may be learning about in school, it's what kids may be hearing about, know that that's already on their minds, and you could anchor that in some program that expresses gratitude in Judaism, gratitude in Thanksgiving, and there's no end of programming that you could do once you think in that direction. So the point is, what this does is it takes us down a different road of creative idea generation. What it does is it forces you to think as far as what's happening beyond your walls. That's actually very helpful. It's a big way to get new ideas. The reason is because when you're thinking with a blank and clean slate, while everything is possible, too much is possible. But when you narrow your focus to what's happening right now, it makes your ability to think creatively very effective. Along a similar vein is to be alert as to the interests of the group. Don't just be alert as to what's happening in the news and what's happening currently, but be alert as to the interests of the individuals in your group. If you know right now the hot thing in school is, I remember, when I was in elementary school, everybody had pogs, right? Everybody had pogs. These little discs that you throw another disc on top of it. It was a fad, came and went. But I imagine that if the youth groups that I was in would have paid attention and noticed that that's what the kids are into now, they could have created an amazing program centered around those pogs. Whether it's some type of parsha development, whether it's building a Hanukkah menorah with pogs, I don't know. And you're not going to use pogs. But the point is, find out what our kids are interested in right now. Once you know what our kids are interested in, you know how to generate and create an amazing program around it, a creative program. So know the interests of what's happening right now, know the interests of what's happening in the news. Next, be ready to write down a flash of inspiration. Be ready to write down something as it hits you. You could be walking on the street. You could be taking a stroll somewhere. You could be getting out of a taxi. You could be in a meeting. You could be in a really boring meeting. And suddenly that great idea hits you. A lot of great ideas are lost. And the key is to write it down as soon as it comes. Write down that idea as soon as you have it. Keep a little notepad with you. Or now with our phones, you keep your notepad app open so you could always write down any idea as it comes. I keep a running list. I have 75 things I'm waiting to implement in my shul, waiting to implement wherever I am, because you write them down as they come. Those ideas are going to hit. And they might not be your own ideas. You might see an idea on a billboard. You might get an idea by picking up a pamphlet, while you're in the waiting room, waiting to see your dentist. You never know where those ideas are going to hit. So creativity could be generated when you least expect it. You need to be ready to receive the idea. Just an off-the-beaten pathway to generate creativity. There was a 2009 study that was done, and the study indicated that people are able to think creatively, solve puzzles, think outside the box when surrounded by the color blue. It leads to a more relaxed and more associative thinking as opposed to, by the way, the color red. So what you do with that, I don't know. Whether it means more time at the beach or whether you find the blue room or whether you stop by here at the OU and you stare at the blue wall behind me or just watch the video for a couple minutes. Watch the blue wall. Whatever it is, the color blue helps with creative and associative thinking, problem solving, solution solving. Numerous studies have indicated that with the color blue, more powerfully ocean blue, and the associations there are obvious. But to allow yourself to think, and that gets to the next suggestion, is allow time for daydreaming. We're so busy filling every minute with another project, filling every minute with answering an email, filling every minute with downloading a new app. Take time to just shut off the phone and stop and think. Let your mind wander. I don't mean actively think of X or Y, but let your mind wander. And I'm telling you, some of those great ideas will sink in. When you give yourself some time to actively let your mind just slip away for a moment, just think, just associative thinking. Think about your groups. Think about different events you've done. Think about things you've seen, things you've read about. When you allow that to happen, the creative juices begin to flow, and you come up with some great ideas. Here's another idea. Imagine yourself as a 7-year-old. What happens is, as youth leaders, we tend to think of youth groups and what the interests of youth are based on our own interest, what we're into. And we end up designing programs around things that impressed us. The flaw in that is obvious. That works for us. Are we thinking from the vantage point of the kids in our youth groups? Imagine yourself what you were into at that age, what you liked, what drove you, what you were interested in, what would have held your attention. And by the way, sometimes it's hard to remember back then or what that was like. So it might help enlisting some kids in getting into the mindset. You need to know your kids anyways. An effective youth director or youth committee chair is going to need to know those children. So you need to know what drives the children, what motivates them, what are their interests. When you know that, you also begin to think creatively. You think in a totally different way. Another idea. Studies have shown that small boxes aren't conducive to creative ideas. If your workspace, so the idea where you're designing your upcoming Shabbos program, is a small space, step out of it. Literally, it gives you the feeling as though you're stepping outside of the box. And that works physically as well. So if you're in small spaces, if your office is in a small, tight area, go to an area that's much bigger, an open area, maybe even a park. Walk around, get your mind going, and start thinking. Again, the creative ideas will come. It's another way to generate creative ideas. Here's another one. Another suggestion is to immerse yourself in the absurd. Immerse yourself in the absurd. Some artists we know have a propensity towards the absurd, and that's because that's what they thought of all day. That's what they saw. Often to create a creative and different program, you need to learn how to think a little differently. And that means putting yourself or thinking about things in a strange and upside-down way. Maybe even take the usual programs that every other shul is doing and think of a way of flipping the whole thing upside down on its head. You could do that with any program. Take any classic program and you could flip it around. I'll take simple, even for the youngest of kids. Duck, duck, goose, right? Think in the absurd. What if you played goose, goose, duck? Where everybody, instead of the person in the middle was running around, you had everybody running around trying to reach the one person, or vice versa. What you do is you take an idea that you've done before, an idea that's been done everywhere, and flip it around. Take some of the words and flip them around. Every shul has built, or a lot of shuls have built, Noah's Ark out of candy, right? Noah's Ark out of candy. Take the things in the parsha that nobody's ever thinking of building, nobody's ever thinking of making. Take those ideas, take those concepts, think in absurd terms, and develop ideas. They're creative. They stick in the kids' minds for a much longer time. They have people talking about them. People love those ideas. People love ideas that are outside the box, that are, in a sense, absurd. The next idea I saw in a book called The Medici Effect by author Franz Johansson. He has a very simple concept. He says a way to generate creativity is to cross-pollinate ideas from different backgrounds, different concepts. Meaning an idea that he uses is that you could develop a whole field of literature just by combining math, science, English literature, the arts, combining them all to create some unique, mashup, so to speak, some unique package. We could do the same in our groups as well. We can do the Medici effect of combining things that aren't normally combined. Meaning, for example, you'll have a shul carnival, right? Someone might have a shul carnival, and at the same time, you combine your average shul carnival with, let's say, a chulin tasting event, or let's say you have in your youth group, you take a carnival and associate that now with an event. I saw an amazing event one shul did, was where they had, instead of just a carnival with rides and everything, they incorporated the fun of the carnival and they cross-pollinated it with the historical aspect. How do you make a carnival out of history? Well, each booth at the carnival itself had a different historical period being represented, whether it was Washington and the Delaware, whether it was Abe Lincoln sitting in his chair at the play, wherever it is, or Napoleon talking to the Sanhedrin, whatever group it is, each section of the carnival is now mixed with history. So besides the educational advantage of a program like that, which is obvious and amazing, the creativity that is sparked by mixing and matching different interests, different subjects, different areas, is able to really propel you forward and doing some great, really great stuff. Another idea is stream of consciousness. A way to develop creativity is to go with a certain stream of consciousness. Let ideas just flow. What that means is as follows. This really works with Google nowadays. You can go to Google Images, right, and begin to type in random words. And as you see the pictures going from place to place, as you put in the random words, ideas will begin to come. I've used this on occasion to create programs. Let's say you start with the word ocean, and then you quickly switch to the word fighter jet, and then you quickly switch, and let just ideas quickly come in. Rav Soloveitchik, let ideas keep popping in. Let the images be visual, and before you know it, you'll have a great program. One person told me that they created the program based on this very method. They created a program which was very successful in their shul. 4 concepts of tshuva from different thinkers of all different walks of life came to them from using this Google Images experiment of trying different ways of doing it. What's very popular right now is Steve Buzan's mind mapping. Look that up. What exactly is mind mapping? Mind mapping also gets you thinking in different directions. You start with a central core concept. Let's say you know in your shul you need to do something for Yom Ha'atzmaut, for Israel. And you draw a line and you think where that leads you. Where does it lead you? You're picturing Israeli flag. You might be picturing falafel. You might be picturing soldier. Whatever associations come out, begin to map it from the central place, which is Israel or Yom Ha'atzmaut. Begin to map it out. Allow the lines to extend and extend further. Keep associating. And then before you know it, you look at the periphery and you'll find you could have 10 to 12 new ideas for what to do for Yom Ha'atzmaut. I tried this myself. We came up with one concept in my shul for Yom Ha'atzmaut. We wrote down the word Yom Ha'atzmaut in the middle, and before we knew it, we looked down the paper and said, wait a second, let's do an evening that celebrates Israel, where the room will look like the outside of the mind map. Israel at the center, and at the outside perimeter of the room is every different concept relating to Israel that we think of or people associate, whether it's Torah Eretz Yisrael, whether it's soldiers in Eretz Yisrael, whether it's someone speaking on behalf, let's say, for AIPAC, whatever associations you may have. In any area, you could do this. You could do a workshop with Rosh Hashanah this way. Quickly make associations and then set up your shul, the room that you have for your youth groups, to look like that mind map. In one corner is the association with how to make a shofar. The other corner with Rosh Hashanah is how to produce honey, so on and so forth. Use the mind mapping technique to literally live out a mind map with the program itself. Another way to do this, to create, to generate creative programming, is to stop look at what other youth groups are doing and instead say, wait a second, why am I just looking at youth groups? Look at other industries and find out what they're doing on a creative level. Find out what a certain, your printing company did to as a leadership training for their newest leaders. Find out what they did. Look online, call up different companies, say, what was something creative you did to build leadership, to build camaraderie? I'm telling you, there's no end of ideas. The creativity will not be the problem. The problem will be selecting through the thousands of ideas that are out there. Every major corporation takes its managers, takes its associates. They take them for a retreat or some type of experiment of building camaraderie, building leadership, connecting its members, connecting its employees. Find out what some of those ideas are and adapt them to the children. There's tons of low-hanging fruit ideas that are out there ready to go. Another way to generate creative ideas is to replicate what happened in the Torah, asking your children to replicate what happened, but setting it up in a modern context. What I mean is I saw one shul set up a courtroom. For example, one shul set up a courtroom and they put King David on trial. Now, you might not be able to do it with your youth groups because of the sensitive issues involved, but you could have Yosef and his brothers on trial. His brothers on trial for what they did to Yosef. Have 2 great lawyers. Have the kids act as lawyers. Kids love playing adults. Ideas like that, where you're merging history, you're taking the Torah and bringing it to a modern context, is amazing for kids. It's vivid. It's alive. It's palpable. Next, it's a day and age of social media. Knowing that, you have Twitter and Facebook. You need help with ideas? Well, put a message on Facebook and Twitter and say, help. I got X coming up. I got Yom Kippur coming up, and I got a lot of kids who are going to be in shul right before Yom Kippur. How do I help them create some meaning to Yom Kippur? What kind of event could I do that's really creative? Any ideas? You'll have hundreds of people responding depending on the size of your Facebook list and your Twitter list and how active you are in that. And if you choose to go down this road, if you're comfortable with using social media for this reason, you'll find it's refreshing. It's really having everyone together helping you create sort of a groundswell of ideas coming from all over the place. I see people posting all the time. Got my 5-year-old's birthday party coming up. Any ideas? And before you know it, 75, 80 ideas for parties. I mean, that's the way companies are now designing even cars, by reaching out to their Twitter and Facebook members to find out ideas and pushback and concepts that they might not have thought of. So besides yourself, there's ways of generating creativity and using others. These last two ideas have done that. Use your Facebook and Twitter, and also looking at other industries and finding out what they themselves are using. I think overall the key is to become an idea collector. Whenever you see an idea, write it down. There's hundreds of shul brochures out there. Here at the OU, if you want to get an idea of what kind of ideas are out there, what kind of creative ideas are out there, you're welcome to call the OU, call our department, the Synagogue Services. Specifically, you could speak to myself or Penny Pozornik. Penny works with youth directors across the country. She could share with you some of the ideas she's been seeing out there on the field. So I think the challenge is not so much generating creativity. It's taking the creative ideas that you do come up with, or that you do get from other people, or that you're able to use some of these blue room tricks and other types of things we talked about to come up with them. What do you do once you have them? That's really the challenge. The generating the creativity itself, well, there's more than enough creative ways to generate creativity. Okay, we look forward to your questions.
Okay, the first question that came in was, what if we have great programming ideas but are running on a very limited budget?
I think that we get that question a lot. I think that most of the great programs I myself have seen in my shul, I see organizations do, aren't necessarily connected to a big budget. You're right, the big speaker who comes is connected to a budget. A major carnival may or may not be connected to a huge budget, because often, many times, your ticket sales can offset, the different types of things you're selling at the carnival can offset. You have to understand, a lot of the great programs don't need a budget. Just take, for example, the putting on trial Joseph's brothers for what happened to Joseph. That it can be such an amazing program. I'm telling you, your youth groups will appreciate that just as much as if you would have spent $3,000 on a float. Because before you know it, the involvement, the preparation that comes into it. We did in our shul a miniature golf course where you had each course in the miniature golf course was another parsha designed by kids. How much did that cost? Each kid spent, on cardboard paper and some props, very minimal amount. The residual effect was amazing, really amazing. If you're involving the kids, you're engaging them with the creative way, it's not about the expense. I believe a programming budget does not need to be high at all. Your budget for youth development only needs to be high for the purpose of training leaders and bringing in new youth leaders if you're that size of a group. But the money does not need to be spent really on all the types of programming. It just doesn't. Most creative programs don't need a single dollar.
Okay. The next question is, one of the congregations is not all observant. So essentially, it's actually getting the concepts and ideas to the people to understand, more of like an outreach.
So what's the question?
So the question is when you're dealing with outreach, and you're dealing with also observant and non-observant, how...
Yeah. There's a debate as to the function of youth groups. Some people would argue youth groups are there to keep the kids busy while their parents are in shul. Some would argue the purpose of youth groups is to educate. Some would argue the purpose of youth groups is to entertain the children so they have great associative memories connected to the shul. Lots of opinions, and at the end of the day, like everything in life, it's a combination of factors. We know that making the children happy is a great way to bring parents into shul. We know that. So there is an element of keeping the parents happy. There is an element of keeping the kids busy who have a long Shabbos, have a long weekend, and need something to do. And there's an element of education because you have them in a room at shul. You have them engaged at shul. All three are components. That means that while you are speaking to a crowd that's mixed with unaffiliated or beginner Jews or Jews who are just learning about Judaism, the ideas don't have to be, let the school impart those heavy, deeper, second level, third level ideas that your more observant families are already going to have. Let your shul youth groups connect to the Torah But for example, take the event that so many shuls do, which is building Noah's Ark out of candy. Your beginners, your outreach kids, and the kids that have been in yeshiva for years, they both relate to the concept that Noah had an ark. Once you've done that, you've connected them to the Parsha. Then the designing of it with candy is already your associative and fun experience. You don't need to take that to a deeper level. There's no need to go into, the 4 or 5 different interpretations as to what exactly the people did wrong with the Tower of Babel, Migdal Bavel. The youth groups don't need that. So it's not like you need to diversify on that level. Diversification happens with age groups and youth groups. That's it.
Okay, and then just a follow-up one that's very similar question is that how do you get the parents out in order to get the kids there, who the parents might not necessarily be observant? So why are they going to bring their kids to the Orthodox school?
I mean, the pattern, if you're trying to talk about an outreach program of building your youth groups for outreach, which, by the way, we are going to do we're going to be sending out a video shortly. I guess we should do one on that, of how to build an outreach-focused youth group. But the key there is to advertise. You need to market that you have, sort of what's called a daycare, or you have, classes for children. The same way, in a sense, Chabad is able to reach unaffiliated parents, quite easily, offering classes, daycare for the kids. So we can. A lot of parents, even unaffiliated, want to leave their kids somewhere. They want something for their kids to do. They want something active for their kids. Show them there'll be something meaningful and something worthwhile and something their kids will enjoy. That's a marketing question. The parents will drop off when they see that it's being marketed and advertised. There's a program in the area, something they could do with their children, seems to have some meaning to it, seems to have some significance. I'll go ahead and do that. But this is part of a more significant question, which I think will give it its own class on how to build an outreach-focused youth group. There are many models like that in America, and they look very different in many ways from some of the youth groups that are there in shuls that aren't dealing with an outreach population. But when you're dealing with a mixed population, the entertainment's the same. I mean, again, you don't have to keep your concepts so sophisticated. Your entertainment, the discussions, I mean, even if you're dealing with an older teen group and you have unaffiliated and affiliated, or those who know a little bit more, know a little less, great intellectual discussions could happen regardless of how much knowledge you have. Our minds are the common denominator.
Okay, great. So this is the Youth Professionals Network, but a lot of people have been actually writing in and asking how, they could tailor it to maybe adult programming. Are they at all similar, or is there any way?
Well, all these ideas of generating creativity, every single one of them applies to adult programming. Every single one. The Medici effect of, taking ideas from different disciplines and mixing them together to come with ideas. So everything we said today applies. As far as specific programming, you got to know your shul. Some shuls take well to something that may come off as infantile in another shul. I know in my previous shul I was at, I did a color war. I broke out a color war in shul. That's a risk because, what, are we kids? No, most of the shul's adults. Like, what are you doing? But you know what? Everyone likes to be a kid at some point, and everyone, enjoys a good time. And it was very meaningful. We did it in a sophisticated way, in a way where everyone participated in the singing and the preparing of the drushas, the speeches, so on and so forth. Those types of things, you could pull it off. I mean, you have to know your crowd. You have to know if your crowd is able to handle something which may come off as infantile. But as far as the more general topic, which we had here today, generating creativity, all of these apply across the board. One of the ideas I mentioned of the putting King David on trial, that would be the adult version of the putting Yosef on trial by, putting his brothers on trial for Yosef. The more adult version would be King David on trial for Bathsheba, 100%. Some of these programs can be adapted. Yes.
Okay, and I think we're going to just take one more question.
Great.
And this one is from an out-of-town community that there are not a lot of kids in one specific age, but they're all different ages. So they're looking for creative programming that can cater to numerous age groups.
Yeah, finding stuff that works for every age is difficult. It's challenging. There are, what I find to work for different age groups are the icebreaker games. Icebreaker games are great. They hit a lot of age groups. There's no end of icebreaker games books. You can go online, Google icebreaker game ideas. There's there's thousands. There's thousands. There's something to the movement and the energy and the fast pace of the icebreaker games that works with different age groups. It also let people at different age groups learn who the other person is. Some of those icebreakers allow for you to learn other ages and who those people are you might not have paid attention to. If you have a youth group that you can't diversify, that you can't break up by age group, I would say to go in that direction. But it's critical, at least for part of the time, to separate your age group. You need to have some types of discussions with an older group that you couldn't have with the younger group. Again, your candy building or whatever it is might not work with an older group. Diversifying your youth groups is very important to take your youth groups to a whole other level. But if you can't do that, you don't have the resources, you don't have the bandwidth, I would stick to the icebreaker games. Okay, thank you so much for your time. We hope you enjoyed. You could always feel free to email me at wings@ou.org. Thank you.